CollabTalk is a copyright of Collaborative ABA Services, making a difference in children's lives.
Hi everyone, welcome to CollabTalk, a series by Collaborative ABA Services that provides information and resources about autism and everything in between. I am Alicia, the founder of Collaborative ABA Services. I'm here with some of our amazing team members.
My name's Katie, I'm an occupational therapist.
I'm Bree, I'm a BCBA.
I'm Meg, I'm a licensed social worker and registered behavior technician.
So today we're going to be talking about autism in the workplace, which is a very important topic and conversation because it talks about inclusion and supports for neurodiverse individuals. So as adults in the workforce, it can definitely be challenging for someone who may have struggles with those communication skills or those social skills or even difficulty with changes. So these deficits can create challenges in the workplace. So to support individuals in the workplace, companies can promote neurodiversity and inclusion through awareness and also promotion of inclusion in their typical work environment. So we want to make a disclaimer as always. Please note that this episode is not intended to critique or endorse any specific providers. Our goal is to simply educate and empower the community by providing information and resources, understanding and supporting others that have, or adults in the workplace that may have neurotypical difficulties, put it that way. All right, team, let's get started. First and foremost, I have to say, and this is something that we talk about all the time, is that autism is a spectrum disorder, right? And while characteristics may vary, certain challenges might be more common to individuals in the workplace. So every individual is not the same. So let's kind of jump into what are some workplace challenges that autistic adults may face?
Maybe some of those communication and social interactions that are sometimes required depending on what environment they're in or what the job entails. They may struggle with that small talk or having to read social cues, especially if they're interacting with the public in
Customers.
Customer service. That's what we Customer service. Yeah.
I think being flexible with changes. I think a lot of times individuals with autism, they struggle with kind of if there's a procedure or a protocol put in place and then something changes or somebody doesn't follow the procedure or protocol, it can almost feel not insulting, but almost really confusing. Because it's but this is what we're doing. Why are you doing something else? And kind of going outside those parameters or kind of thinking on the fly can be tough.
I think understanding those instructions too, do they learn visually, orally or in written communication, what kind of instructions do they need to understand the expectation? And I think going off that too is kind of feedback. When you're getting feedback on performance, it can sometimes feel like criticism rather than constructive criticism or positive, negative feedback.
Right.
And also I think, understanding those social norms is huge, right? Because, each company may have different cultures. Yeah. And they might have different rules. Yeah. And, you might have someone that doesn't always understand those social rules. You might have someone that has issues with boundaries. And boundaries might be a big problem, especially if you're working in the customer service area where you're dealing with families or parents or kids or even other key stakeholders. And that can definitely cause issues down the line. And even looking at individuals that have really highly intense interests, right? Yeah. So they might appear to be to themselves all the time, and then all of a sudden they might like music. And as soon as you say something about music, they're like, "Oh yeah!" And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're having a conversation about music. Right. So and it's okay to have those conversations, but it can kind of also appear to be socially awkward to colleagues if they only want to talk about music and nothing else. Right. So I think definitely those are some workplace challenges for autistic adults to kind of consider. And then also when we're looking at, in addition to those workplace challenges, also looking at the impact of employment, right? Because again, when I was talking about the social cues, it might come across as co-workers might misunderstand that person because they might not realize that person has a disability, right? Because when you're in the workplace, some individuals might not disclose that they have a diagnosis, right? And also being the perceptions of others can also impact that individual. Are there any other impacts of employment that you guys can think of?
maybe being overlooked for those promotions or like upward movement, like depending on that. Like, of course, that's not a. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Not a reason.
It's
Yeah,
not intentional. It's
yeah.
like it's not on purpose. It's just if you were as an employer are looking for certain characteristics or
Right.
certain criteria for upward mobility, and even though this employee is consistent and does a good job, they're not showing those characteristics for
Yes.
upward mobility. That can be tricky, especially if upward mobility in your job is management or like you know being in charge of other people or having kind of a team to work with. If you are on the autism spectrum and you struggle to read those nonverbal cues, pick up on those social pieces, you may not have what they'd consider management material, so you might be overlooked for some of those things, which is challenging.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you have like a super focused skill set, it's hard to kind of broaden that skill set as you climb that corporate ladder
Right,
and
right.
get more of these kind of tools to be successful.
I think looking at like the sensory aspects too of the environment that you're working in or kind of having those challenges, like I know that if you're in an environment where it could be busier or noisier or there's lots of things going on, it can be really challenging for someone to focus or pay attention. And so there can be times where you need to take like a sensory break, but like you're in the middle of rush hour or
Right,
you know
right.
you're working with a particularly difficult customer that's really like you know setting you off, but you can't just like walk away. I think those are times where it's hard, where other people might just push through, but for someone with autism it's much harder to just ignore those parts.
Yeah, that's a good point. Never thought of that either.
And you bring up a valid point, which brings us to the next topic I want to talk about, like talking about like the importance of supportive work environments, right? And you're looking at, you know, the needs of someone that might have like sensory difficulties, right? Or needing some accommodations and supports, right, in the workplace. So I think, you know, as employers, you know, we do have the ability to embrace, you know, neurodiversity and also create a workforce or workplace that supports everyone, right?
Yeah.
Because we're looking at inclusion. What are some of the positive aspects of supporting autistic employees in the workplace, do you guys think?
Well, when Katie was just talking, I was thinking how important it would be to have professional development opportunities to increase awareness of diversity, equity, and inclusion, so that, you know, if you do see a coworker struggling, you can step in and recognize like they're struggling. Okay, like they need a break.
Yeah.
Let me help you. Go, you know, take some space, take a break. And just the awareness like growing creates just kind of more of like a cohesive environment.
Right.
I also think it's important to think about all the benefits that someone on the autism spectrum can bring to your community and to bring to your job. I think that a lot of the times autism kind of gets that like social lens of being more disruptive or having those kids that have more challenges. But, you know, by the time somebody has become a workforce individual, they've had a lifetime of, you know, ability to work on those things and kind of support themselves. So kind of think giving them a fair shake and really having that equal lens, I think is important. And I also think too, Alicia, to your point about disclosing or not disclosing, you don't have to if you don't want to. It's completely your personal private health information, but under ADA you cannot be discriminated against if you require supports or kind of accommodations or changes or things that are within your workplace to provide you. So I think that if you are comfortable disclosing it to HR, to your employer, it is a private matter, but also that can then give you access to certain supports that you may not have otherwise.
Yeah. And so what are things that companies can do to help support autistic adults in the workplace? So Meg, you mentioned about training, you know, and I do agree that, you know, through training and education, we are raising awareness in the workforce. And that also helps strengthen our teams, right? So that our teams can be more knowledgeable, but also supportive of all individuals. Any other things that you guys feel like companies can do to kind of help promote a supportive environment?
I think along the lines of what you were just talking about too, is it fosters acceptance, right? Encourages team members to be more understanding and respectful of those neurodivergent individuals. I think that's huge, because when you accept them and understand the way they're thinking or maybe why they're acting the way that they are, then it just creates a better morale altogether in team.
I think too that individuals with autism do really well when they understand what are the expectations or kind of what could be a game plan for certain things. So I think, I did a lot of customer service when I was younger. I worked at like Old Navy and West Marine and places like that. And I know that they didn't really do a lot of training specifically of like, okay, if this customer is difficult, if this person is unhappy, if there's, basically if these bad things happen, what do you do? So I do think that kind of walking through those scenarios of, okay, you go through this, you do the protocol, and then it doesn't work out. Like, what can we do? Kind of like pre-gaming on those things, I think is helpful because like we talked about on the fly, flexibility is hard. So I think just being conscious of, okay, how can I help pre-teach some of these skills so that if my employee encounters this, what can they do?
And I think that's beneficial not only to like their coworkers who might, have diagnosed autism, but also, like you said, to the customers. So it's a win-win. It not only strengthens their team, but also helps with interacting with key stakeholders, such as their customers. Other things you mentioned too about like the ADA and accommodations earlier, right? Definitely companies can offer accommodations, and that might look like companies providing flexible workplaces or spaces, given those clear instructions, right? As far as, what's expected, and they can provide instructions not only verbally, but they can provide written instructions because we know that individuals with autism benefit from visuals. Another thing is also if they're doing an interview, looking at the formats of the interview, not only are they might asking them questions verbally, but maybe they might ask them the questions, written down for the individual and allowing the person to respond in a manner that supports them. And also like what you said about like the expectations, right, at the beginning. So definitely providing like clear structure, clarity on their job roles and expectations. And I think that's huge because when we're given that information, they thrive because it goes back to like the whole thing with structure, right? What you were saying earlier, agree with structure.
That's what I was thinking about too, like providing agendas like ahead of time, if there's meetings or things that they're expected to do that are maybe outside of the regular routine, like so, they don't get hyper fixated on this one task and know we have to move on, or what the conversation is going to look like in the meeting, what topics are we covering, so it's not like deer in the headlights and causing that anxiety and uncomfortableness.
I think back to what Katie was saying too earlier is individuals, neurodivergent individuals, bring some great strengths too. And I think finding and working with the individual's strengths just as you would with someone else is really important because maybe they aren't a strength of social interaction like those customer service skills, but maybe they have other strengths, so like putting them where they can succeed I think is also really important, and then brings value and acceptance across the board as well, seeing those strengths kind of shine out.
And I think like you guys, everybody brought some key points. And I think, in closing, in regards to this episode, some of the things to kind of take away is looking at what you were saying at the strengths of autism, right? And you and Katie. Like, autism in the workplace, we shouldn't view it as a challenge, right? It should be viewed as more as like an opportunity, right? To broaden our understanding and also build on their strengths of the individuals. And we want to create, like what we were talking about, like an inclusive workplace, right? That, not only supports autistic individuals, but it supports everyone. Because if everyone feels supported, then the organizations are more likely to thrive. Are there any other additional key takeaways that you guys want to add, or? I think I
think we did really good,
Awesome. So thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of CollabTalk. If you found this information valuable, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an episode. Got any thoughts or questions? Drop them in our comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, let's keep this conversation going. To learn more about Collaborative ABA Services, check out our website at www.collaborativaaservices.com. In addition to our social media pages such as Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and
TikTok.
Oh yeah, TikTok. Bye.
CollabTalk is a copyright of Collaborative ABA Services, making a difference in children's lives.